Right on time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be talking about how does your thinking affect your past? And the way this call works is I will teach and answer questions and then do live coaching at the end of the call. So if there's something that you would like to get coaching on, you can be thinking about it. And when we get to the end, hopefully I'll leave enough time to get to the end and answer some questions and do live coaching. Okay, so what about the past? What does your thinking have to do with your past? You may have heard me talk about this before or may have heard it on my podcast, but it's something that I feel really strongly about and that we talk about a lot in coaching. And something that we believe in coaching is that the only way a person or an experience or a situation that has happened to you in your life can affect you now is if you are thinking about it now in the way that causes you pain. And I know that might sound confusing, but I will explain it. You might say, I went through this horrible experience as a child, and how can you say this isn't affecting me now? You might feel shame now. And it's not because of what happened to you in your past. It's because of what you're currently thinking about when you think about it in your past. So I will explain it some more as we go, but this is really great news because the people from your past do not have power over you anymore. I have clients who have experienced extreme abuse and trauma when they were children, and they are continuing to abuse themselves now because of the way they're thinking about it. The physical abuse has been over for a long time, but they're perpetuating the emotional abuse in their own minds, and they don't even realize that they're doing it. They're giving so much power to the person who abused them. And oftentimes that person has already passed on, and yet they live in the client's mind right now, or in your own mind, if this is something that you are doing and you're just torturing yourself over and over. You might want to think about it this way. If I ask you to make a case for you having a wonderful life, you could go through your life, all the events and things that have happened in your life, and focus on everything wonderful that's happened to you and just leave out everything negative. But if you were asked to describe how terrible and horrible your life has been, you could do the same thing and only talk about the bad things that have happened throughout your life. So the story that you tell about your past depends on what you are focusing on right now. And this matters because it creates your thinking about your past and how you're currently feeling about it right now. And this shows up in a lot of different ways. All of us know someone who identifies themselves as a victim. They may have a very good reason for believing that they're a victim. They may have been tremendously abused or victimized in some way or many ways, and they still continue to think of themselves as a victim. It can really take over your thinking. And they might possibly say, let's say the person who thinks of themselves as a victim could say, how could you say I've had a good life? My parents died when I was young and I was abused and I was in foster care. It's because in their thoughts, they are focusing on all of these negative events that happen in their life. The truth is everything is relative. And what if you compared yourself or the events of your life to someone who was blind or paralyzed or didn't have food or water? You could look at your life with those comparisons in mind and then you would have a different perspective. I recently read this book, amazing book about a World War II Holocaust survivor. It's called The Choice by Dr. Edith Ava Edgar. And she shares her struggle to come to terms with her loss and suffering, and how she chose not to let the horrific things that happened to her in the Holocaust, in the concentration camps, define her. And I want to share a few of her words from her book. She said, sometimes the worst moments of our lives, the moments that set up spinning with ugly desires that threaten to unglue us with the sheer impossibility of pain we must endure, are in fact the moments that bring us to understanding our own worth. It is if we become aware of ourselves as a bridge between all that has been and all that will be. We become aware that we have of what we have received, and we can choose what we will take with us and what we will not perpetuate. It's thrilling and terrifying all at once. The past and the future surrounding us like a vast, traversable canyon. She goes on, we will re-engage, or will we re-engage? Will we reenact all of the hurts from our past? Will we abandon the people we love as a consequence of our own abandonment? Will we make our children pick up the tab for our losses? Or will we take the best of what we know and let a new crop flourish from the field of our life? Dr. Ager says we can choose to face grief, heartbreak, despair, sadness, or to pass pain on again and again. Or we can choose to forgive and to love. All of us are the same. We will each always be someone who will bear suffering. We can't erase the pain but we are free to accept who we are and what has been done to us and move on. I love it. I love this book. It's so inspiring, and it's just a beautiful example of someone who faced horrific trials and took beauty and grace from it. And the book talks about how she was able to heal and eventually overcome, witnessing the death of her parents and some of her family. And it's just beautiful. But it goes along with my thoughts for today. It's actually very freeing when you choose to look at your life as though everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to, so that you could have the life you were meant to have. When you think about your parents, or you think about your childhood or your first marriage or your first boyfriend, what are you focusing on when you think about those things? There's a psychologist named Dan Sullivan who teaches that we get to take from our past what we want, and we get to leave the rest behind. So you get to decide what you want to think about. You get to decide what you're going to make it mean, the events of your past. So notice how you feel when you tell the story of your past. You can be free from something that someone said to you yesterday, and you can be free from something that happened to you when you were 5 years old or 20 years ago. The things that you think about when you think about your past can bring you joy if you choose to focus on the positive events and the things that you've learned from those events. So I want to give you 3 takeaways from our call today. The first is I want you to start noticing the stories that you're telling about your past, either to yourself in your own mind or to other people when you talk about your past. This is one of your assignments after this call today. I want you to just start noticing what are the stories that you're telling. Just pay attention and don't be quick to judge your story. Because if you are too self-critical and self-conscious, or even maybe afraid of saying how you really feel about it, you may not be able to really bring it up. You may not even be able to articulate it. So just allow yourself, give yourself the freedom to notice without judgment. So, and when you notice yourself, telling a story about your past, just kind of look at it with curiosity, without judgment. Just notice, isn't that interesting? This is the story that I tell. This is the story that I tell about my past. So just become aware of it. So I'll give you an example. So I have a client who's from a really big family. She's one of 10 children. And an example that I thought of is, you may think about your childhood and growing up in a big family and having a lot of siblings, and you may feel like you were treated unfairly, that you weren't in an ideal situation in your family, like you were slighted, like you weren't the favorite. And you can feel like that. You can feel like things weren't fair. It wasn't fair what happened to me. Just allow yourself to think that thought, that things weren't fair, and just look at it and think about what wasn't fair and why you think it wasn't fair. The second takeaway I want you to have for today is pay attention to how you talk to yourself. Many of us have really cruel self-talk. It's actually really harmful. If you notice the stories that you're telling yourself are harsh and mean and cruel, I want you to take a look at a picture of yourself as a child. And I actually learned this recently at a coaching training in Austin. I was taught by a life coach there who is amazing, Rachel Hart. She coaches people to stop drinking, if that's when they're trying to stop over drinking. And she came up with this idea that she encourages her clients to find a picture of their younger self and post it somewhere in their life, or several, make copies of it. And she said that she actually did this when she was trying to stop over drinking. And she would over drink one night, or, the next day, she noticed that she just put herself down and shamed herself and ridiculed herself so bad that it was crippling for her to move on. And so she started looking at these younger pictures of herself, her childhood pictures, and talking to that child in the way she wants to talk to herself. So the goal here would be for you to find a picture of yourself as a child and then talk to yourself in that way that you would talk to yourself as a child, or any child, with love and compassion and understanding. So I pulled out a picture of myself as a child for your enjoyment. And I'm going to look at this picture when I want to talk to myself. I really don't struggle with that so much, but a lot of people do. And it's really painful. So find a picture of yourself as a child and talk to yourself at that age. Help remind yourself with love and compassion that, yes, things may have seemed unfair, and there were things that happened that were unfair in your childhood, but there were also a lot of great things that happened. And help remind yourself as a child of some of the good things that happen, and help yourself remember those good things. Anyway, that's my suggestion for that. Let's see. Also, when I was mentioning earlier about not judging your thoughts, a problem that I've seen a lot of people struggle with is they work so hard all of their lives to hide those thought feelings and not let them come out, that it's not easy when you do that. It's almost like trying to press a float under the water. The harder you try not to feel those feelings and hide them and put them away, the more pressure is pushing up on that float to get it up out of the water. So I think it's important that you don't try to ignore or suppress your feelings or your thoughts about your past, no matter what they are. Just let it come out and don't judge yourself for whatever feelings you have. It's okay to say it however you feel it happened, to say things that maybe you wouldn't say to your parents or your siblings, or they wouldn't agree with. That's okay. You have your own experience. We each have our own experience in life. And so it's okay to say whatever feelings or thoughts you have about your past and just let it come out without judgment and without repressing them. So this is really important work for each of us to do. And we need to allow ourselves to think and say the hurtful things that we experienced and that we're carrying around with us, and to allow those to be spoken without blaming ourselves and necessarily blaming others. Just allow it to come out. And remember to treat yourself with kindness and compassion, just like you would someone else, or especially a child. So one of the thoughts I had for an example, someone asked for an example of that, is if you were, let's say, the oldest child in a family, and like this family, a really large family, like my one client, and you might feel like your younger children or all of the other children got more attention than you. But of course, some of the siblings might feel like you got most of the attention if you were the oldest and you had all of your parents' undivided attention at one time. So there's more than one way to look at the situation of being in a large family. Everyone's going to have their own perspective. So there are benefits, and you could say problems or issues in every situation. So allowing yourself the freedom to feel like things were a little bit unfair at times because you were the oldest, maybe you had more responsibility than you felt like you should have at a young age. That's okay. That's okay to feel like that wasn't fair. I was expected to do more than I should have been as a young child. It's okay to accept that you feel like that was unfair, but you can also take that same situation and look at all of the ways that trial, having more responsibility at a young age, has helped you become independent, resourceful, capable, able to handle a lot of responsibility. There are positive things that come out of every negative situation, every trial. And you can look at those things, those skills, the experience and knowledge that you gained from that negative experience and take that with you. You can leave behind the unfair part and just take the wisdom and experience and knowledge that you gain as an asset to you. You can appreciate it. So that's the challenge that I have for you. We are all human. We're all flawed, which means we all have weaknesses. We all have things that happened in our past that we don't like. We've all experienced sadness and heartbreak and tragedy at different times in our lives. And that doesn't make us any less worthy or lovable. In the eyes of God, we are all worth that $100 million. We're all worth that $100 million bill. Some of us are crumpled and crushed and maybe torn on the edges, but it doesn't make us any less worthy. So remember that. Don't let the experiences of your past that harmed you or hurt you make you feel less worthy or lovable today, because you're not less worthy in any way because of anything that has happened to you in your life. So the summary of that is for you to acknowledge the past and accept it. Don't deny it or repress it, but choose to focus on the good. And I want you to look back over your past experiences as you're reviewing and thinking about these things, and try to really focus on the things that you've learned and the way the trials and hardships that you have experienced in your life have blessed you in some way, or helped you gain resilience or independence. There are ways that you have been taught and have gained wisdom through your trials in your life. And if you look for them, you will find them. And hopefully at that point can appreciate them as teaching you valuable lessons. So that's the goal I want you to have from that. And third takeaway I want you to have from this is you get to choose what you want from your past and leave the rest behind. You get to choose what you want to think about it. And you get to decide what that is going to mean in your life, which is the best news ever. So the 3 takeaways I want to give you are: first, notice the stories that you're telling. Just pay attention with curiosity and not with judgment. And second, let the feelings and emotions from your past come out. Don't judge them or repress them, and talk to that child inside you with kindness and compassion and love. There's a beautiful quote by Tony Robbins that says, "Heal the boy and the man will appear." And that applies to all of us women as well. Heal the girl and the woman will appear. And third, choose to love and forgive those who have wronged you in your past and yourself. That's a challenge, but I want you to choose to take all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge you have gained from your life experiences and do good with it, because you've had it for a reason. So all of those reasons can bless you and benefit you in your life. In coaching, we understand that the cause of our pain or emotion that we're feeling in our life is never found in our past or in our childhood. It's found right now, in this moment, in your mind. Your current thinking creates the life that you have right now. Your thoughts, your emotions, the feelings that you're having right now. And that is the best news ever, because we can change our thoughts. We can change our thinking. So it's so exciting. And I love this work and I love helping my clients do this. So if you guys have any questions, oh, good. We have a couple of minutes. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comments and I will answer your questions. Or if you just want to make a comment, you can do that. Okay, question. I have never had a good relationship with my mother. Now that I am an adult and I'm raising my own children, I want to have good relationships with them. How can I do that if I've never had an example or a role model? Okay, well, you can be the example of what's possible. You can be the mother you wish you had. You can make it possible. That's the challenge, you know? You can be that person that you wish you had. You can figure out how to mother in all the ways you felt like your mother was lacking. That's your work to do. So that's a really good question. Okay. Here's another one. I have made bad choices with men in my life. How can I make a better one going forward? All right. That's a really good question. I would say it's important to get to the underlying cause of why you're making bad choices with men. And we can do that in coaching, and we can figure out what's going on in your decision making and uncover your emotions and thinking that's leading you to get in relationships that you feel like are unhealthy for you, and figure out what's going on, what underlying cause is going on in there. And we can work on that. We can work on changing the thoughts that you're having right now about your relationships and help you create healthier relationships with everyone in your life, not just men, but it will take practice. And that's the thing that we do with coaching, and why we keep practicing and talking about all of these topics is because it takes mental effort to retrain your brain. We all have very practiced neural pathways where we have practiced these same thoughts over and over and over and over millions of times in our lives. And just because we become aware that that's a thought error, I really don't want to keep thinking that thought anymore, it doesn't mean it's easy to change it. And it doesn't mean it will change just because you want it to. It takes practice, practicing the new thoughts and figuring out what are the intentional thoughts that you want to have about a specific topic or a relationship. Okay, I have one more question. Okay, how can I get along with a family member that is rude and disrespectful to me? Well, rude and disrespectful are subjective terms. That would, I mean, we could do some coaching on that, but it's a perfect opportunity to explain manuals. And we have 2 minutes. Okay, a manual is basically what we have in our mind that we think everyone else should do. We have a manual or a set list of rules and ideas that we think a mother should do. Moms, we have a manual. Everyone has their own manual, and no one else has read your manual. And you haven't read anyone else's manual, but we all have these manuals in our mind of what we think people should do in certain situations, of what husbands should do, and fathers and siblings and teachers. And, we all have these manuals in our mind. And it sounds like what you're dealing with this family member that is rude and disrespectful is you have a manual for what your family member should be doing. And whose manual is right? Your manual or their manual? Maybe their manual says, family, we let it all out. We don't hold back. We just say how we feel. And if that's rude, that's rude. So anyway, it's something we could work on in coaching. We could work on dealing with that person, however they are. But the bottom line is you can't change anyone else. So you have to find a way to live with how you show up in your relationships. You want to show up as the mother, the sister, the daughter that you want to be. And then whatever, they get to be whoever they want to be. They get to be the type of mother, sister, daughter they want to be, because they're going to do it anyway. So you can stop trying to make them live by your manual, because they're not going to. So anyway, that's a great topic. Maybe I'll do our next group discussion on manuals. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. I am out of time. I would love to get your feedback on the call today. If you heard anything that you want more explanation on, or you have any comments or questions for me, I would love to hear your feedback from this call today. So send it to me either here, or you can send it in the email, and give me some feedback from this call. And thanks for joining in. And it's good to see you guys. Have a great week. I'll be back next week. Bye.